All right, we will get going. I think this one's on. Yes, good. Good morning. Thank you all for being here. We're excited to have you all here. And we're excited to get started on these medically led sessions. So I am Daniel Ordauer. I'm the treasurer of the R Foundation on the board of directors. My almost 7-year-old, he'll be 7 next week, has Boring Over syndrome. We were diagnosed in 2018 when he was 2.5 years old. A little bit about the R Foundation. We're a team of 1 staff person who I hope you all have met, and if you haven't met Amanda, you should go introduce yourselves. She's amazing. An engaged board of directors and other supporting volunteers. There is so much that we want to do and need to do, but we still need more people and more hands to help us do it. So for those of you online and here in the room, if you're interested in helping out, there are many ways you can. We're happy to talk to you about any way you might be interested in helping. Some ideas are hosting an Instagram takeover of our account, showing a day in your life, coordinating a weekly social media feature of one child with an ASXL syndrome. We are always looking for administrative support, taking minutes, virtual meetings, website communication support, search engine optimization, if anybody's got background in that. We're looking for folks to help us boost our results. Family ambassadors to introduce newly diagnosed families to our foundation and to our resources, and we're always looking for people to speak on panels and share information and share what you know. There's post-event survey, or talk to me, or Amanda, or Laura, or Julie. We're all actually in here right now. Come find us and talk to us if you want to get involved. So today, this morning, we are, the title of this is Sensory Sidebar, Space for Caregivers to Pause, Register, and Integrate Sensory Supports. We have Shelby Surfas and Winny Soenaryo, and I will let them introduce themselves.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Daniel. Okay, let's see. Let me come over here. Yes. Go to the next one. Thanks for having us here. I'm an LA native, and was just talking about sightseeing and weather and all kinds of things that you could check out while you're here. Hopefully, those of you that are visiting took advantage. And if you're going to be staying later, I'm happy to answer any questions. I have a few kids of my own, and I've been here for a very long time. Okay, so all of you are the experts. I'm not going to come up here and say that do this way or do this that way. I'm really just coming in to really talk to all of you about how we may reflect and think about things and how we may problem solve and give you some of those tools if you don't already have them, and see if that's something you'd like to add to your toolbox or to some strategies. So let's see what's next. And then some things to explore. Although I'm not sure we can do it in 30 minutes, but to roundabout talk about what causes sensory seeking and sensory protective behaviors, what management strategies work best. When is more help needed? And what does the future hold? Those are some of our general topic areas to focus on. Okay. Who the heck are you? Do you want to jump in first? I talk so much. Winnie, why don't you introduce yourself? Do you mind? Sure. Okay, let me introduce Winnie. Yeah.
My name is Winny Soenaryo, and Shelby and I, we are both legal faculty at USC. I have been an OT for 18 years, and I've practiced mostly in pediatrics population. So I've worked in the United States, I've worked in Singapore, I also worked in Indonesia, where I was originally from. But now I'm back in US to practice, and it's my passion how to help parents to understand better their children and help children, especially in sensory integration. And I'm currently being assigned to Momentum Pediatric Therapy Network in Torrance area, where the legacy of G airs, where sensory integration starts, to help to continue the legacy, also to do a lot more research on how to help children with different diagnoses who have sensory processing difficulties. So, and I have 2 kids, like Shelby, and I'm really glad to be here, and I'm hoping to learn more from all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Winnie. And I'll take a slightly different approach to introducing myself. Okay, so that's me as a kid with my brother, and in the 80s with garbage pail t-shirts and roller skates. That's right, everybody. So my brother and I, we look like twins. He's 2 years younger than me. He's deaf, severely impaired, and I was really his eyes and ears, which is interesting because just this past year, so him and his wife, they're both deaf, and they have now 3 children, and their youngest, he just turned 2 and is pretty significantly on the autism spectrum. So I've been very involved with family dynamics and supports for my whole life. Okay. I don't know, that was just a fun picture. Okay, let's see. And, you know, my area of sort of expertise and practice, when I started to become an OT, I started working with children with, come on up. You can move the tables too if you'd like. Any of you, if you can't hear or see, feel free. So when I started OT, I worked with, you know, young kids on the spectrum or developmental disabilities, one-on-one at home, and then I was doing all kinds of physical play with them, just naturally because that felt right. And then I learned about OT, and as Dr. Soenaryo mentioned, Dr. Ayers, who's the original sort of identifier, founder of sensory integration in the 60s and 70s. I learned all about that, so I came back to Los Angeles, studied about OT, studied everything about sensory integration, became a teacher on the topic, and now I'm really exploring the feeling, the emotional element and the connection of that with sensation and sensory input. So I work currently, we're both faculty at USC Center, Division of Occupational Science and Physical Therapy, but while Dr. Soenaryo is at Momentum PTN, I'm with Children's Hospital Los Angeles, and I direct our OT program in behavioral health, mental health, where we serve many kids that are underserved that have mental health needs. Okay, I think that's a little bit of everything, and that's all the boring stuff. Okay, we can skip that. Let's think about things differently. This is what I've learned all those years of reading textbooks and listening and trying to get good grades. It's like just pause, pull back, recognize that there are other perspectives. I like this one just because it's fun and playful. You do it always in your day-to-day life, okay? Okay, so now you know a little bit about us. I see all of you here. I'm not really sure. I'm told that many of you are parents, family members. I imagine there may be some professionals here. You know, we're all the same. This is the point of this slide, is I'm just talking person to person in terms of practical strategies, suggestions, what I've learned, what I haven't learned, and I'd love to hear the same back from all of you. Okay, and I have a ton of slides, so with the idea that you can go back and digest all the content and the information afterwards, and this can be mostly, you know, person-to-person interaction. So, back one more. So, for example, when I talk about thinking about things differently, okay, what is this? What would this be called? Anybody? Yeah. All right. Yes, W sitting. Right. One of the millions of things to sort of point out are the wonderful things you get to learn when you have a child or when you are a professional working with young kids with lower muscle tone. Okay, there's a W sit. Okay, so you see that, okay, don't W sit. That's what you're told. We don't like this, get the child out of this position in general. Okay, now, okay, so we go to the next slide so then you think, all right, so let's look at sitting up off the floor. If we get up off the floor, we change the environment, then they're sitting up. And they're not W sitting anymore, but now you see all this other stuff that's going on. It's like, okay, well, we solved one problem, but now have we created more, right? And what is it exactly we're going for? It's not just don't W sit. It's, what is it? And then, next slide. Oh, next slide, I don't know. This is what we're looking for, right? We forget because we're so kind of focused in on the disability element of it or the problematic element that we may forget. We need to look at movement. Movement is something that sort of initiates posture, and upright posture will naturally help a child sort of sit up a little bit better if or when they have the skills to do so. And it's meaningful and fun, okay? Even if the posture's not great right here, I would much rather see this kind of thing happening than, perfect positioning on a seat. Okay, so that's how I like you to sort of think about things. There's always something to look at. Okay, were you all with me so far? Okay? I'm gonna go through 3 sort of general case composites of kids with sensory processing difficulties. None of them will exactly fit not only your child, but any child, okay? None of them fit any child, but they are a way to conceptualize and understand sensory differences and how to approach and support them. So we're gonna go over Sylvia, Ronald, and Matthew. Time allows. And then we have all this other stuff at the end too. So this one's huge. No matter what, we need to acknowledge arousal, attention first. This is a phenomenal audience today. I have to say, you are much better than any the professional conferences we go to. A lot of times people aren't really there. They're not, their arousal may or may not be there, their attention may or may not be there, and then the information doesn't really go in. They're there because maybe their job has sent them there, or they're kind of sort of interested, but then things, they wander. But I can tell this is a different space. All of you are completely thirsty for the information, and that is what your child is going to need. This is the state your child needs to be in when you're trying to engage them in anything, whether it's new social play skills or motor skills or anything. Okay, so hold on to that state and get your child in that state with all of it. Okay, and how do we get them there? Please.
As Dr. Surfas has shared, all of us, including our children, we learn our world through our senses. And a lot of time, what makes them want to learn about the world or around their surroundings is their internal motivation. And so when Dr. Surfas saying that this is a special group of parents who come here and hunger and thirst for this knowledge, is the same applicable to the child. Our children, they are really thirst or they hunger to learn about the world by exploring. They really want to know about different things. But a lot of times what happens is there are things that hindering them to be able to accept the senses around in their environment. So just keep that in the back of your mind as we describe the different characters.
And if any of you play tennis or know about tennis, the baseline, where do you start, right? You don't just jump in and start volleying. You've got to start and assess the situation to get an idea of what is happening before you jump in and try this strategy or that strategy, because it's not going to work. Or if it does work, you won't know why it works. Okay, so 3 general cases. First one we'll say is Sleepy Sylvia. Sleepy Sylvia is not literally asleep. Well, she might literally be asleep in this picture, but the sense is not literally asleep. They're not literally tired. It's that they move through the world with tired, with lower muscle tone, right? I'm gonna sort of posture a little bit, may sort of bump into things, may not react always or consistently to loud noises, or a tap on the shoulder, or other things that many children are very reactive to, right? You may be worried about their maybe safety, scratching themselves too much, and not realizing that it's painful, that kind of thing. Okay, so that's Sleepy Sylvia. All right, let's do the next. So, if you have a Sleepy Sylvia-esque child, I don't need to be giving a shout, I'm trying to get closer to everyone. What do you do? And this is a literal question. I'm curious. Does anybody? Yes.
I have a very sleepy Sammy, and she loves to be, we call it beating her, which sounds awful, but she loves to be really pushed with lots of really deep pressure before you ask her to do anything. Get her to calm down, get her to wake up. She likes almost like forceful burping on the back, or pressing on her shoulders, on her hips, and on her knees, just really, really deep pressure and repetitive. And sometimes for 30 seconds at a time, you can get her to, oh, okay, I'm awake, or I'm not upset anymore, or whatever's going on. She really likes really deep repetitive pressure. Any caregiver.
Yeah. And you're going kind of like this, so
Closed
it's
fist, this kind of slaps. That's not as soft with her, but yes, closed fist.
Yeah.
Like baby that needs to be burped.
Yeah.
It's kind of really bad. It's kind of like a
regulating, creating a rhythm for her. When you said deep pressure, I thought, well, that's interesting, because deep pressure can also have a very calming effect as well. So I was a little unsure, but then when I saw your hand movements and the way you explained it, it became a very sort of upregulating sensory experience. Excellent. Okay, what might we avoid? I kind of just gave it away. What would we avoid doing if we had a Sleepy Sylvia? This is your child, and you're trying to get them to interact and engage and play and do stuff.
Monotone, calming.
Exactly. You're going to be like, Sylvia, time to play. You're just adding to their lower registration levels. You're just matching them. You're not bringing them anywhere. I mean, it's nice if that's kind of your goal, or maybe it is time to sleep or something, but not if it's time to interact and kind of wake up to the world, right? Okay, let's see, next. Yeah, all this stuff, intensity, that's right, I saw this, I was like, okay, good. Giving her a little bit of time to react. If the registration's lower, then you're not going to expect an immediate response. Let it sink in, let her process, let her see what happens. Maybe wait a few, 1, 2, 3 seconds before you give any more prompts, before you ask more, do more, change the environment in any way. And a lot of exploration, opportunities for exploration, movement, bouncing, absolutely. Yes, okay, let's go to the next one. All right, please, yes.
So, would this also be applicable if the child maybe becomes disinterested in something and then just sort of shuts off into sort of this sleepy, I'm not going to do this.
Can you repeat the question on the microphone?
Yes, absolutely. So the question was, does this also work, or is this also relevant to a child who may just not interested in something and kind of I don't know, you didn't use the word shutting down, but.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like he'll pretend to sleep if he's not interested.
Oh, okay. That's a whole different. That's completely different. That's not necessarily, no. I mean, it is kind of different, but that's why one of the first slides, I had the picture of a few kids with different facial affect, and I said the sensations, feeling and feeling, right? The child's communicating something when they don't want to listen. So if they're actively ignoring or shutting out, then I would probably, if they're able to do that, then I would probably maybe inquire a little further to understand what that's all about. Maybe they're uncomfortable, maybe there's something wrong, maybe they, they don't want to do it. And just like I said before, with the arousal and the attention, if you don't have them, there's no point in going forward with the lesson or the intervention, because they're not with you, right? You're just creating a negative kind of interaction, either for you or them or both.
And also going back to the internal motivation. So a lot of times when the child is not motivated to do something, they can go into that direction, they appear not to be interested and not wanting to do, and it's harder to get them to move forward, like Dr. Surfas said, to get them to do something if they're not really motivated to do that. And that's why the SI approach is a lot of times it's through play to motivate them to be engaging in different ways of receiving different senses from their environment.
Right, and it's figuring out is a sensory strategy going to work if the child is emotionally or cognitively not actively saying no. That's not when we're going to apply a sensory strategy. That's going to be a different professional that you're going to connect with, or maybe an OT as well. But I'm only suggesting these sensory strategies and solutions to address the sensory element to get them sort of up, engaged, and interactive. Okay. All right. So Ronald, roller coaster Ronald. I don't know. I don't get the sense that most of the kids with the ASXL sort of variety are so much on the Ronald space. I mean, honestly, right now, the fact that everybody's really quiet and attentive, and the families are, makes me feel like this may not.
Maybe they're just not in the room.
My son's not here.
Okay, thank you. All right, I was gonna say something's very calming here. Okay, so roller coaster Ronald and his buddies are just down the hall in the resource room, or they're back at home with the therapist or other family members. Up and down, intense emotions. You guys know who that kid is. Can be unpredictable. All right, let's see. So,
and also to mention, not only in terms of movement, a lot of times the modulation also have to do with the tactile system, where they are very sensitive to touch, and their response is either fight or flight. So it can appear like they're running away and they're very hyperactive, but actually they're avoiding some sensations that they are receiving.
okay, so what do you do? What do you do with Ronald? Yes.
Dim the lights, talk calmly. I like to gain visual attention and hand squeezes, calming voice, slow music,
Excellent. Okay, I'm going to repeat it for the recording. So she said, dim the lights, calming music.
I was doing hand squeezes or
Hand
visual
squeezes.
attention.
Visual
Something
attention.
slow, light moving, maybe.
Slow movement. Nothing too abrupt, right? Or unexpected. Absolutely. Absolutely. And you also would set them up for success, meaning, and yourself up for success, that if something like sitting in this conference room and listening and being here is just too much for them, it's too much for, then you're not going to do it, right? It's also figuring out when, or maybe there's a certain time of day that you know that there's a window that they are really at their peak and they can be most engaged, and that's when you think they can do something challenging. Okay, great. But then the rest of the day, you're going to have a lot more predictability, absolutely, and expected things. All right, let's see the next.
There's also one thing, a lot of child with modulation issues, sometimes when they seems to be running around or jumping around, or and with try to give them more and more, it's not helping them. Instead, it gets them more dysregulated. So something to think about too.
It's interesting because we had a child like this in the school where I was, and we were trying to deal with discipline issues, and we thought that by the time that there were some different choices for an elective this last hour, so we put him in like the PE class, and he was miserable. He was making everybody miserable around him. We finally figured out that if you put him in the cake decorating class, where he could just be on his own and tune out everybody else, all the bad behaviors went away.
Absolutely.
So, but you would think that with a kid like this, oh, they need to run, they're too tired to sit. No,
Yeah.
it's just backwards of what you would think.
Yeah, and it shifts and it changes. And so, for the kids who are like, I don't understand. Are they seeking this out? Are they avoiding it? And it seems like it almost looks like back and forth. That's what we're talking about, and it's a lot of extra work on the caregiver, on those around the child to help them to figure out what does, a regulated state even feel like. And you're having to do that for them and with them all the time. Okay. All right. Yes, so, Roller Coaster Ronald would be the kid that you're not going to, jump out and say, surprise! That's the only never. You will, like you had mentioned before, maybe have some sensory seeking opportunities for them, but let them seek it out, right? You're not bombarding them with information or toys or things, you're letting them explore it and have control over it. We are running out of time. Safe spaces, like little tents, are awesome because if they can, there's little teeny ones that can only fit one kid pretty much. I love those. And they can zip it up, they can go in there. I'm not worried about two kids in there together where I can see them. They can go in and they can just decompress. And if you see a child that's continuously going into a quiet space, not necessarily with a screen, but they're just going to quiet spaces, they need that. I'm certain. They need that to calm themselves down. They may need your help in calming them down. Having heavy things, heavy pillows. Heavy pillows are like the number one thing to get and to buy. It's a huge pillows for kids to be not just like relaxed in, but to crawl over and to hide under and to pick up and to throw and to fall on, right? Those are the things that help them understand their body a little bit more. Okay, and
something to add to the teachers here who work with kids with modulation. We just had an activity camp in a school setting, and what I'm hearing, the child has been given some sensory strategies, but they still feel dysregulated when they're in the classroom. And after analyzing what happened, actually is because of the visual stimulation in the classroom. There's too many posters and pictures, and that can also actually make them disorganized. So it's not only the safe space, they try to provide a space for them in the classroom, but still the classroom is full of visual cluster. So what happened is when they know that it's causing them to be dysregulated, they try to bring an empty room with nothing at all, and that helps a lot. So another example, sometimes visually you think you are doing to the body, but then when you enter a room with visually clustered environment, it's causing them to be disorganized. So something small, but think about too, and when you see it.
So, but how do you manage that when you're somewhere in public and you have no control over the environment?
you like the good questions. She's grilling us up here, guys.
Yeah.
We repeat that. We repeat the question.
Yeah. What? Go ahead.
I have a lot of kids or adults telling me that if they are disorganized, what they do is they wear a hat. Like a hat, it's actually helping them to cover what's going on around them.
Yeah, I'll tell knock it off.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was not gonna let you get away with that.
That's one strategy, or you can bring, to a room or a place where it's less people. But sometimes what I know parents try, it might work or it might not work, because everyone is different. It's the habits, the glasses that's helping them not to be overstimulated by their surroundings and environment.
This is an idea. I don't know if it works. Sure. In public, such a tough situation. Because like at school, you can go into a room, remove all the visual stimuli, and start with one thing little by little. Maybe something that your child's super interested in, and have that ready to pull out, gain their visual attention right here, you know, to kind of start that calm down process in public. But ultimately, I feel not enough accessibility for us. We all know that, but that might be a good strategy to try, or like a towel over a head or something. But might get thrown off too, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think in any of these questions, it's like, okay, what is it about the public space that is exacerbating the challenging behaviors? Then you can kind of like break it down, right? And it might be there may be some sensory strategies, but there may also be, that's all right, we don't need that.
We're getting
It may be the sensory strategies that are needed, but it may also be like something else, you know, or it is too much, or it isn't too much, or, you know, they're being a 2-year-old, you know? And so there are a lot of different pieces of figuring out how to understand what's what. And so you never want to just kind of like think some strategy, but just pay attention to how much you're involved and think about when you need to go back or forward, change the situation. I think we have a lot of time for questions now.
That's a very good point. I just would like to add on to that, because when we see a child, we think they're disorganized by a system and not looking at the whole child, or looking at how actually the child is perceiving different sensations from the environment. It might be visual, it might be auditory, or it might be, you know, different things. So when providing strategies, as Dr. Surfas said, we have to look what is actually the cause. Because by providing certain strategies, we thought, oh, it works in one environment, but it might not work in another environment. It worked at some time, but it might not work on other time. So it depending on the environment, also on the situation of the arousal level of the child. If the child is already at a stress level and we put them in a public situation, you can imagine how the senses. But if the child is, they're calm and they're organized, and you bring them to the public spaces, and they seem to be more receptive about accepting. So it depends also on the condition of the child. So the modulation is really, really tricky, because then you will have a different child in a lot of different environments.
So now it's time for all of you to talk. And feel free to ask more questions. I'm only teasing a little bit. It's tough. I'm curious about sensory, like maybe some sensory specific questions that people have. Yeah, I see your hand going up already.
Sorry, I was just gonna ask what other parents or you guys like. So my daughter is more of like the Sleepy Susie, and so and she's like, the OTs come in and they have their stuff, and she's like, she'll do it once, and then she's like, dude, I don't feel like doing that. I don't want to do that. I'm not gonna pay attention to you. So you talk about how important it is to get their attention. How do you do that?
So what motivates her?
That's what I'm saying. It's like, well, food. So we use food a lot, like, because she'll pick up like tiny little things of their food because she can eat them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but what other things, like what other motivators have you guys found, I guess, that have helped? Because I want other motivators. I don't want just food, right? Does any parents have any suggestions?
The only motivator that's really consistent for my kiddos is very low on what means lots of is music, lots of music. So we get our attention, that's how OT, PT, speech, everybody turn the music off. Sammy, if you want your music back, if you want to, you gotta do this first, and then that's the most likely that she will do whatever you're asking her to do. But we have a really hard time with consistency. So what works and the kind of input that she needs the therapist is like, especially a new therapist, I love this, we're military families, so it's a lot. They're like, oh, I have the answers, I know what I got this, right? And then it works for like half a session, and she starts to get progress, she starts to approach goals, and then we fall off. And it's like we're back to square one, over, and I mean, she's 12 years old, this is over and over and over. And as soon as we say, oh yes, if we can strap her into and let her go on her bike, she does awesome, she gets this, she needs more swinging, or she needs more pushing, or she needs more whatever. And it works for a couple of weeks, and we start to approach goals, and then it doesn't work at all. And it's like a completely back to square one, they can't motivate her, she's flopping on the floor and doing nothing. And they go, oh, well, she's not capable. And it's so hard to sort out what is she capable of, how much of this is behavior, and how much of it's ability. So, and then now that she's 12, they're like, oh, it's probably puberty, she's probably getting the teenage angst, and she just doesn't want to behave anymore. But it's the same kind of refusal that we've seen for 10 years at least, so it's not necessarily that, but I feel like we don't ever get anywhere. We're always just back and forth, and there's never more than a couple weeks worth of progress. Not that that's a question, but.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my question is there a regression?
At times.
And is that what's happening, you know, and it's a cyclical piece where she is making progress, and then there is something, I don't know if it's medical or otherwise, and is it a regression across other things as well, besides just those motivating?
There have been big regressions, like with seizures and neurological episodes, that we have to relearn to walk, and we have to rework on swallowing and things like that. But there seems to be a much more cycle of almost even interest or ability to connect with her. Sometimes you're there, it works, she does what you want her to do. You know, she's capable of walking all the time. Sometimes she'll walk 10 feet, sometimes she won't walk a step, and sometimes she'll walk miles. And over the years, I've never been able to figure out what it is, and there's not a particular caregiver or a situation or a med list or anything that I can really attribute it to. Sometimes she's there and she's on, and sometimes she's not. And I feel like if we can get consistency, then we can build on those skills and not always be working on the same goals for PT, OT, and speech for years and years and years and nowhere.
Yeah.
So just a question, have you tried a male therapist?
She actually loves guys better. So that is, she wasn't until middle school when she had, her IPAT teacher was a male, and she's a daddy's girl. So my husband can get her to do 10 times the amount of things that I can in like a fraction of a second. And it's always been that way. We know that she responds pretty well to her teenage brothers. But it wasn't until we had a guy teacher in her IPAT classroom that we saw a world of difference in what she was doing at school. I don't know why.
Wyatt wants to snuggle with a woman. So every time you go to therapy, all he does is like lay on and cuddle her, but when a guy comes in, he works with her.
Interesting.
So we've had to request male therapists.
Well, that would be hard to find, I would think.
It is.
Yeah. Any other families that have suggestions in the back? Yes.
My son, he waxes on whenever he gets excited.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's nonstop. And he snorts like, don't used to do, it sounds repulsive, but like he can't blow his nose. And he'll do it over and over and over and over again with the teeth. I don't know if there's any things that try to stop that, because he's starting to get me from flapping. Like crazy.
So what I heard from the question was, just to repeat it for the video and for others, and make sure for myself I got it. Essentially, your son is doing a lot, when he's excited, a lot of flapping, and also a lot of repetitive, sort of like moving his mucus, or something.
Yeah, it's like snorts.
Snorting, yeah, something's happening more like
I think it's the
vibration maybe, and he does a lot of teeth grinding. Yes. So when I see something like that, I immediately am going to go to not necessarily how do we stop that one behavior, but instead looking at the other side, the opposite end of it is what are some things that where he's the most engaged or participatory, whether he's not doing those things. Can you think of any examples?
No, I mean, people, when he's eating, if he likes something, he eats flat.
Right.
I mean, it's the flat. As far as hands are involved. No, there's really no.
Yeah, or in the water, or in the sand, or.
He'll still flat in the water. Same thing in the sand. It's just not flapping. And then when he goes to bed at night, he goes on his chin and he goes wah wah da da wah wah, and he passes it. He calls it his head rock. And he's been doing that as long as I can remember. He's almost 8.
And so, I mean, it's an ingrained sort of thing that he's done for many years. So that, you know, it's a little different than, you know, oh, let's try this other thing to reduce that a little bit. If that's like breathing to him. Okay.
Yeah, it tends to relieve him, but then he's like, the kids are starting to cry home from school. He wants to know why he can't stop on the black especially. Because head rocking, the kids don't see. But, and it seems soothing to him. And he just rolls over on his belly and goes on his chin. But that black like non-stop. And then if he's an object in his hand, it just goes hard. So he's able to sort of reflect on that and share that information. So how is he communicating through words? Yes.
Is he able to use his hands to sort of like point to anything to aid in communication?
Yes, he can.
So I wonder if maybe that's, you know, it sounds like he has a lot to share, right? And he wants people are looking at him, whether it's the other kids or whomever, and he's not able to sort of get the information out effectively. So if that's the case, then I'm guessing that communication and letting people know what's going on inside might be a motivator to help, even if it's something like, so then if he has to use, I mean, he can talk, but also if he has to use his hands in any way to point or to explain something, then that's more time than he's not flapping.
And he does the raspberries.
He does the what?
Raspberries, like crazy.
Raspberries?
With the flapping hands.
Yeah. And or like, well, I'm sure you've tried a lot of different oral.
He flexes like backwards, like 66 pounds. Hard when he does that, like he's even holding. He flexes so hard, his whole body tenses up. And just the raspberries.
And even during like an intense sensory experience, like a really fast moving swing, or so like if he's swimming in a pool and in the water, do you see any change in the frequency of those?
No.
Okay.
And he loves to swim.
He loves to swim.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, what about, like, weighted vests or, like, the clothing, like, find that help?
So yeah, the comment up here is about what about the vests, like the speedo vest or pressure vests?
Like, weighted vests and, like, the clothing and, like,
Weighted blankets. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would have to see your son to know whether or not I would think it may be appropriate because of muscle tone. Like sometimes what I see happening is kids that have really low muscle tone, right? Like this one, or the Sylvia example, then you add the weights, like a weighted vest or something, but then you're really just creating more, further impacting their posture.
His just came off his orthotics, but he's gonna have to have another pair. His legs are still hours, but he had 9 pairs of orthotics, 3 walkers, and 3 pelvic stabilizers, and he did all of those 5. And it runs till he was 6. But when I say run, he would fall fast, fall. And then he attacks whoever's the closest person to him, like they did it. That made him call. So, I don't know that that's with his muscle tone being so terrible, especially around his ankles. I mean,
Yeah.
Something that's like,
Yeah. But you said something. You said he attacks.
yes.
So what does that look
He
like?
tries to run very awkward, and if he trips, if the closest person to him, he attacks because he thinks it's like their fault.
he's upset.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
So he will bite, scratch, pinch.
but at those times, is he also flapping?
Yes.
Okay. And he uses, I'm just trying to get a sense of any hand use for utensils or, you know.
He does use utensils.
He does use
Utensils
utensils.
definitely, we have to help him feed, but, he can use utensils. But he definitely needs to feed it.
And like crawl, how about crawling?
Crawling, he doesn't crawl.
Like through, like, or army crawl or anything when you, like through a tunnel?
No, he wouldn't do that.
No. Maybe trying to figure out how to if not, only if he seems interested, if you can turn it into something playful and fun. You know, anything that you can get him to have more feedback on his upper body, right? So using gravity as a way to help. Getting him prone, getting him on his stomach, and then if you have something in a playful way, you know, if it's, I don't know, if he likes to slide, you know, then maybe there's a time when he goes face first, you know, and somebody's there to make sure he's safe on the slide, and then his arms are extended. Or if it's a tunnel or it's something to crawl under, you know, you don't have to go by a tunnel, but like, you know, a coffee table or something low that the object's on the other side, and how's he going to get to it? So anything where he's in that position, I think is probably the direction you're going to want to go, because then he has to use his own muscles, as opposed to, like you said, something weighted that just kind of, you know, is more passive for him. Yeah, I imagine being prone might be, that may be a reason why he doesn't like it, is because he hasn't done it much.
So I think sort of in line with this is a question of, are there any other strategies that we all should be trying for, you know, expressing frustration, right? And anger is hard, I think, for most of us, right? There's a lot of biting, chewing, you know, clenching, and a lot of pinching and scratching. Are there any other strategies to, you know, to avoid that or to work through that for all of us, I think?
I might want to add something. I know that I've been asked a lot of questions on how to use those self-injury behavior or stinging behavior. And I've always asked the parents question. I'm sure everybody tried 101 strategies to stop that behavior or to stop that self-stinging or self-injury. And what I've been hearing is, yes, you provide me with a strategy, and I try it doesn't work. And I've researched the internet and I've looked for strategies, it doesn't work. I just want to share here, every child is different, so the strategies that we share might or might not work. But one thing that I learned from the parents that I see the kids, when I ask them, what is it bothering you as a parent when you're doing self-stinging? I mean, it's hard for me to parent to see if the child is doing self-injury behavior. We try to stop that. And a lot of times what I see in a child when they do self-injury behavior is because maybe they've been doing it for so long. And that's the strategy that they know how to help themselves. And when we provide with another strategy, they feel that it's not helping me, I'm not going to do it. But this strategy that I've been using maybe for 8 years, it's helping me to calm down. It's helping me to regulate. And what matters is, I don't want to put the child in a dangerous situation. Of course, self-injury, we will try our best to how to substitute so that the child will not be involved in self-injury behavior, and just try different strategy. But as long as it's not dangerous, or it's not dangerous to the child itself, sometimes I tell parents, you know what? I'm sure you've tried and you've tried it, you're frustrated, you try different strategies and it doesn't work. The better is if the child is calm, organized, and happy, you know, we don't have to stop that. And after with this family, also the child also has a rare genetic diagnosis, and he's doing different things. And I've always asked mom, so mom, you see this, he's coming for therapy, and mom has a lot of goals, like I want a child to do this, I want a child not to do this, I want a child to have a list of goals that she wants us to do. And I say, that's not wrong, that's absolutely no, we want to work on that. But when I ask the parents, what's your biggest concern for the child? I want you to think about the biggest concern. And I'm sure you're all being asked that question. And the parents finally say to me one day, I just want my child to be safe and happy. And I think that's a really big answer for me. Whatever we do, even though there's so many goals, we might fine motor skills, gross motor skills, sensory. But if the child wants, the parents want the child to be safe and happy, we have to make our goal of our treatment around that, safe and happy. There's a question.
So Daniel, I was gonna say, like, one of the things that we did for Alex was we started keeping a tracker with his providers and trying to observe when was he doing these things, right? So like Alex will often like poke his eye, right? And what we found was sometimes, for example, he was bored, and that's when he started to do those things. And so when you know why it's happening, then you can be like, okay, maybe he's bored, let's redirect to something else, right? And so I think having that was helpful and observation, because there are different reasons why he may be doing those things.
Right.
Exactly. I thank you for bringing that, because I think by knowing the reason, it's critical for us to give strategies.
Right, especially because they can't tell us.
Sorry.
We are struggling with not by himself biting himself, but he's biting other people, he's pulling people's hair, that sort of behavior. So with the lack of comprehension, it's like talking to a newborn. There's no, if you say no, he'll look at you and with a blank face, or he'll laugh at you or something. So we've been trying to figure out how we can avoid the biting, and he pulls his brother's hair, and we just don't know what do we give him instead to play with or bite, or that's what we're struggling with.
And everything goes in his mouth. Everything. Rocks, back, legs.
We can't really go to public places unless he's in a pram. He eats rocks, grass, poo. There's nothing that's stopping him. Everything just goes in the mouth. So we don't know how to minimize that. And he's also missing out, being in a playground, because it's just a danger to us and himself. Yeah.
You ever use like 2 necklaces or toys so that he always has something near him
Just
to
as
chew?
dummy. This is pacifier stuff like.
There's a lot of oral motor tools that parents usually, like the necklace, or things for them.
Sorry, can you speak into the microphone?
Sorry. So there's a lot of oral motor tools that's out there. Usually parents will buy like the necklace, chewy tubes that they can just always, but a lot of times, what I found in children, when they put things in their mouth, it's not either, but a lot of times what happens is they try to explore the things because they are not receiving enough sensation from tactile or touching. They use their mouth as second tools. It's like, when a baby child explore, they start to put things in the mouth. That also there might be a lot of reasons for that, like they're seeking more into their mouth, which, if they're seeking a lot into their mouth, the chewy tube necklace, that will help. But then if they are exploring with their mouth, the chewy tubes will not help. So it depends again on the reason why the child is putting things in their mouth, or is there any other reason that the child is putting things in the mouth. So we have to kind of know the root cause and why.
And how does he do with toothbrushing?
We brush his teeth for him, but he just chews on the brush.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he's not showing any signs of sensitivity, that's why I asked. So maybe finding, there are therapeutic tools and resources, also even just a washcloth, a little bit of a rough washcloth, getting a little warm water, helping him explore. I know he may not understand fully, but just like a massage, that you may, do on any part of the body, on his mouth, paired with singing, some sort of regulating context, just to sort of help kind of bring his awareness to his mouth, because it sounds like he's bringing things in, but it's not satisfying necessarily, right? He's just doing it, or just the grabbing. So helping him make sense of it, make meaning behind it. With like a song or washcloth. There's also the vibrating. I wonder how that would do the vibrating toothbrush.
Yeah, those help a lot.
Yeah. And I know we only have, it's like almost 10 o'clock, there's a lot of hands, so maybe we can quickly just answer a couple more questions, and then we'll call it. Yes, right here.
Yeah, my question was very similar. My daughter is 3 and everything goes in her mouth. We have necklaces, we have all that stuff.
Yeah.
I think with her it's more exploratory, and our big challenge is when we take her out, we travel here on the airport, thinking of clothing, her mouth goes on everything. And I don't know, I'm looking for strategies, less sensory seeking, because I think that is involved, but it's not, her main thing is exploratory, and how can we try and direct that in a safe way when we're out.
Mm-hmm. And she grabs things, so she puts
Everything goes in her mouth, yeah.
But I mean, she uses her hands.
Yes, she does.
So
or she'll put her mouth right on surfaces, chairs, tables, walls.
I mean, right away, my instinct is, what can we do? What activities can we do to make sure that she's getting feedback to her hands, to her arms, to her upper body in a meaningful way? So I'm even thinking, okay, physical play is one example. You can't be doing physical play on an airplane, I understand. But anything where she's like, even if she has to be leaning, right, on one arm, that's one arm less that you have to be worried about. I mean, it sounds silly, but that's the kind of stuff, or if she's learning how to hold on to the monkey bars, right? The little ones or something, nothing extreme. She has to do this. There's nothing, so thinking about how can you create and encourage the activities, or holding onto a swing or something that are going to minimize the availability of that moment. That's my go-to. Yes, and there's a question in the back.
We had something similar with our daughter where everything was in the mouth, and we tried chewing gum, and that kind of kept her preoccupied for a while, just working with the chewing gum and not putting her mouth on everything else. It'll last for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, sometimes it'll last for an hour. But that's been
That's a great idea. Yeah. Or
works for our son as well.
chewing gum works.
And he gives it to me.
Chewing gum.
She would swallow it, but
Yeah.
Try it.
If you find one you can't swallow it, there's ones with xylitol and stuff, sometimes there's some I think that you can.
I didn't know that.
There we go. Love it. One right here. Yes.
Hi, my son's name's Kiali. So he's super oral seeking, and what I've done is I usually have a thermos of ice. So anything like super alerting for his mouth, I have like chili mangoes, like any kind of chili, sour ice, something really impactful to their mouth. That's helped a lot. It doesn't always do the trick, like sometimes we're not always successful, but it does help a lot.
I love it.
That's kind of a very good strategy. And back to the root cause of the chewing is if they're seeking more sensation. If seeking more sensation, those strategies will work. Like giving them chewing gum, giving them different kind of taste, temperature, that will help with the oral seeking strategies. But if it's for exploratory, it's because, if you remember the first thing I said, children explore the world through their senses. And so when they are not getting enough input from one sense, they will compensate it with another sense. And so what we can do is let them explore in a different way. Just keep giving them, let's say, through their eyes, this is, let's say this is like a rock, touch it. And with the eyes, with different kind of, with other senses, try, it is exploratory purpose. So I know what you mentioned about, I have a lot of kids who explore with their mouth because they just want to know how it feels, and they're not getting enough senses to their tactile. And so we can add it through, the visual, and then, how does the rock sound? So different sense, just introduce them with the different senses. And sometimes it might work, sometimes it doesn't work. Again, back to the different child have different needs, and different strategies will work for different child.
Thank you. I think we
Yeah.
hit our time limit.
I think so.
Yeah.